couple hundred UAW members rallying outside the Sterling Heights assembly plant. This very plant was on strike last October and now threatens a return to the picket line.
We have a lot of concerns. Most of them have to do with keeping the promise.
That message on full display, referring to an agreement between the company and the union to reopen a closed plant in Belvidere, Illinois.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Parts Talk. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate each and every one of you. Now, we are now in an employer's market as the automotive industry is facing an identity crisis. Consumers are reluctant to purchase new cars. Interest rates are too damn high in my estimation, and repossessions are up, and wages simply cannot keep up with basic living expenses. Now, automakers like Stellantis, Ford, VW, GM, and Mercedes, just to name a few, are caught in the middle of shifting strategies, from ambitious EV plans to backtracking on those very same commitments. Now, considering Stellantis and Ford, both giants, are grappling with new realities, Stellantis is facing internal strife with the UAW over unmet contractual commitments, and this is signaling a deeper issue within their operations. Meanwhile, Ford is scaling back on its EV ambitions, scrapping plans for a fully electric SUVs and doubling down on gas-powered vehicles, at least for the foreseeable future. And these decisions reflect a cautious approach in an unpredictable market, but also highlight a significant pivot away from the promises of a greener future. Now, I have two video features for you today showing the state of the industry. But before we begin, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and also hit that like button. The algorithm will really appreciate it. Let's take a look at the recent union standoff with Stellantis and the UAW. Take a look at it right here.
Tonight, the UAW putting pressure on Stellantis, auto workers rallying outside the Sterling Heights assembly plant, standing in solidarity with workers in Illinois.
It was less than a year ago that union members were on strike as they negotiated new contracts with the Big Three, but now the union says Stellantis is going back on their promises to reopen a plant in Illinois.
7 News Detroit reporter Brett Cast speaking with an auto expert, as well as Stellantis workers threatening to strike tonight.
Well, Sterling Heights Assembly is one of many Stellantis plants threatening to strike over the delayed reopening of that Belvidere plant. And workers I spoke to here today, nearly a year since that stand-up strike, say they're ready and willing to do it again.
Keep the promise!
It's a message and a warning shouted loud and clear.
We are the union!
A couple hundred UAW members rallying outside the Sterling Heights assembly plant. This very plant was on strike last October and now threatens a return to the picket line.
We have a lot of concerns. Most of them have to do with keeping the promise.
That message on full display, referring to an agreement between the company and the union to reopen a closed plant in Belvidere, Illinois, which Stellantis has now delayed, citing market conditions.
Considering we just came off a contract, 8 months ago, we shouldn't be at this stage of the game right now.
The UAW ramping up pressure, with President Shawn Fain using part of his speech at the DNC to call out the company on national TV.
Stellantis must keep the promises they made to America.
So if they're willing to well check.
For those who have been riding with me from day one would hear me talk about the auto cycle, and this right here is one of them. There was hostility between unions and companies back in the 1980s and the 1990s, and companies would begin to relook at their operations and chart a way forward, and they would set up joint consultative committees, JCCs, to represent them and collaborate with their findings to management. And that's how strategies like TQM, Total Quality Management, came around. Some companies would create their own internal training module, like Toyota, who had the Toyota Way. Ford had One Ford, and so on. This made rise to celebrity CEOs who would be treated like rock stars, accredited to turning companies around. Jack Welch, Lee Iacocca come to mind, and they would make millions to speak at seminars and conferences, highlighting their ideas for better companies and how companies can transition themselves being forward and being at the forefront of being perfect role models in the business community. You still have a few remnants of these consultants on LinkedIn, which to me is saturated with fake consultants, in my opinion. We have the rise of social media and social media influencers who make far more money than the men who are out there building and maintaining our infrastructures. Let me play some more and let's get straight to the point.
On that deal, what else are they willing to welch on? Everything else in our contract that they promise us, the health and safety of our workers.
Union member John Wire says despite the Illinois plant being nearly 400 miles away, it matters to workers here in Sterling Heights, sending a message to the CEO.
That entire community out in Belvedere is going to suffer because of the decisions he makes. And he doesn't care because he's sitting across the pond.
In response, Stellantis claims they're not violating that contract, saying in part, quote, the UAW agreed to language that expressly allows the company to modify product investments and employment levels. Therefore, the union cannot legally strike over a violation of this letter at this time.
This could be a very crippling strike.
But Merrick Masters, professor emeritus at Wayne State University, says without an injunction, a potential strike could go on for weeks before a resolution. This rally, an attempt to avoid it.
I think this is in large part a opportunity to just demonstrate to the CEO that they're serious about this.
Hopefully that he sees us out here in numbers and he do the right thing.
While these workers aren't certain what's ahead, they say they are certain they're ready to strike. Are you willing and ready to do that again?
I am.
Now, if there is a strike that happens, it's expected to happen sometime in October. In Sterling Heights, I'm Brett Cast, 7 News, Detroit.
Now, I need to chime in again because in the past 10 years or so, well, since around 2012, we have become very divided. And there is someone or an entity out there that is profiting off our chaos. I say always follow the money. And this right here, you're seeing with Stellantis and the UAW is another reminder of how we have digressed as a society. And we have systems in place trying to prevent us from talking about it. Censorship are put in place just to share our thoughts. Now you're here on a political platform galvanizing further division with the very same people who have created this financial mess with the policies in place. Today's politics, I tell you. Now, companies are in business to make a profit. Biggest single operating expense of any business is making payroll. Stellantis will continue to keep their doors closed if they can't realize any form of break even. The escalating prices of vehicles, particularly with the move towards larger high-end trucks and SUVs, have put new cars out of reach for many. And gone are the days when consumers could purchase a basic affordable car. The market is now saturated with expensive models that are not only unaffordable but also impractical for daily use. And this shift have driven a wedge between what customers need and what automakers are offering, creating a current disconnect between automakers, dealers, and the customers. No one will listen. Honestly, I'm really sick of corporate executives. Let's take a look at our second feature.
Bound down to business, Ford is scaling back its EV strategy. Very interesting, postponing some vehicle and scrapping others entirely.
Yeah, and it actually is kind of backpedaling from what they said about a month ago, Cynthia. You might remember we were talking about some canceled plans by Ford for the Oakville assembly plant and what their strategy was for that. So let's backtrack a little bit. So back then, a month ago, Ford said that it was delaying a project to build a 3-row SUV that was fully electric at the Oakville assembly plant, and instead they was going to be building a heavy-duty form of gas-powered pickup truck. But now Ford is saying instead of delaying that 3-row fully electric SUV plan, they're just not going to make it at all. So that's going back on a plan, again, only a month later. So they're still trying to reevaluate their future electric vehicle sales. They still want to make them, but it's just not going to happen as quickly as originally thought. So they still are focusing on it, Cynthia, but maybe lowering their investments right now, going more towards hybrids and investing more in gas-powered vehicles, at least for the next few years.
Okay, interesting. Now, just
Ford is scaling back on their EV plans. Now, we can't criticize without offering solutions. Stellantis, Ford, GM, VW, just to name a few, they need to reestablish trust with their customers by focusing on affordability and practicality. In my estimation, bringing back smaller, more cost-effective vehicles is the way to go. Additionally, a balanced approach to incorporate more hybrids could bridge the gap between traditional gas-powered cars and the future of EVs, catering to a broader market segment. Toyota has done it. The consequences of inaction are severe. And reputational damage isn't limited to the offending dealership or the automakers, but affects the entire automotive sector. The trust that customers once had in the industry is eroding, and if these companies don't adapt, they risk losing an entire generation of consumers. Now, to wrap this up, Stellantis, Ford, VW, GM, and others will need to realign their strategies with consumer needs, focusing on affordability, practicality, and a realistic transition to greener technologies. Now, by doing so, they cannot only salvage their reputations, but also help steer the automotive industry back on course in these turbulent times. And it will take a while. Millions of dollars have already been lost because they refuse to stand up against a dumb decision to promote EVs at the time, costing taxpayers billions of dollars and their jobs along with it. That's my rant for today. If I go further into this, the passion I have for the automotive industry, seeing the way it is today, is a reminiscent of what took place in the 1980s and 1990s, going back even to the 1970s with the oil crisis. The cycle will continue, but it has been amplified by some of the decisions that our current leaders are making, affecting both you and me, not being able to move forward and generate a practical way of life for us or our children. As usual, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to grab a copy of my ebook, The Parts Manager Guide. Please smash that like button on your way out. It will only take you 1.5 seconds to do so. Until next time.